Yo, so there are a lot of career waves happening right now. Earlier this month, I read this piece by Arianne Cohen that talks about something called the Great Resignation. So as we look towards working in a post-pandemic world, there's this wave of current professionals, at least in the US, who are leaving their current jobs, some of them pursuing entirely different roles and careers than the one they were previously in. This week, I also got to see some of the students that I work with in person for the first time in what feels like forever. So congratulations to them as they look to graduate this year, which brings up this second wave, right? This wave of freshly minted college grads looking to start their professional careers after graduation. Yo, whether you're starting your first job or looking to switch things up in your next move, these career decisions can be exciting. But as someone who's gone through quite a few career switches already, I know that choosing what's next can cause a lot of stress. There can be a lot of self-doubt that comes with these decisions, regardless of where you are at in your career. So some of the questions that might come up include, am I choosing the right career path? Should I stay in my current role? Should I jump into something that's completely different? As someone who's changed career paths quite a few times the last couple of years, I want to shed light on my experiences. Although I can't tell you what the right next move is for you, I hope to bring some perspective on what it's like going through a career switch as you approach your own career trajectory. Career switching, in my experience, has a ton of benefits, but it isn't without its fair share of challenges. There's some good, some not so good, and most importantly, some key takeaways and advice that I hope will help you. Hey everyone, what's going on? Virgil in the Cut, back here again. I know it's been a while, but I hope you've been doing well in the meantime. I hope you've been staying comfy. I know in Chicago the last couple days, the heat has not been playing around, and then weirdly yesterday it was like super gloomy. So regardless of the weather, regardless of how things are going on wherever you may be in the world, I hope you're staying comfy. If it is hot, I hope you have that crisp AC running. But yeah, let's get into it. So in 2014, I was hired as a high school teacher after graduating college. So first job out of college, super excited, but I was also really anxious. I was worried about whether or not I had chosen the right career path for me. At this time, I had this idea that I was locked into my choice right out of college. If I became a teacher, then I would be committing to either teaching for the rest of my life, or that I would gradually work towards maybe becoming a principal, perhaps founding a school of my own one day. Of course, 3 years after teaching, I actually decided to leave K-12 education for the time being and jump into an entirely new role in a real estate startup. It felt like a complete 180 turn from what I had been doing, and although I looked forward to gaining new experiences, I couldn't shake off this feeling that I would just be starting over. Like I hit this reset button and I would be building my career all over again. Of course, since then, I've worn a number of other hats, anything from social media coordinator, receptionist, dancer and choreographer, startup co-founder, program manager, higher ed admissions officer, unemployed roommate. So these are some of the roles I've played the last 7 years, some of which have been full-time work experiences. Others have been startups or side hustles, personal projects. If you've been keeping up with my channel, you also know that this year I unsuccessfully applied to medical school. So I'm no stranger to the process of career switching, as well as both the feelings of excitement and doubt that can come with carving out your own path. You already know I can only speak from my own experiences, so I'd love to hear about your own experiences and stories as well. What are some of the setbacks and achievements you've had in your own career journey? And if you're just starting your first job, what are questions you have as you begin your career? Now, I originally meant for this whole thing to be a single video, but to avoid making this video too long, I've decided to break this video up into 2 parts. I'll reflect more on the good and bad, my experiences of career switching and the career journey in this first bit, but I'll be sharing some of the best advice I've been given when approaching career switching in the second part. But let's jump into part 1. I have a fondness for exploring myself. Getting lost and finding your way again is a pleasure like no other. We're exquisitely lucky, you and I. So I've actually been playing this game, Hollow Knight, recently, and I wasn't expecting to be hit by some of these deep quotes in the game, but here we are. This quote captures the spirit of what one of the best parts of switching between different careers is, and that is we get to explore and reinvent ourselves. As I mentioned before, my first 2 full-time work experiences post-college was this juxtaposition between teaching high school and working in a real estate startup. So just between these 2 experiences alone, over the course of 4 years, I discovered what type of work I enjoyed doing, what was important to me in a career, and where I could even find fulfillment outside of my day job. I developed a sense of what I liked and what I didn't like that was backed by my own personal experiences. So I think the latter half of that, figuring out what you don't like, is incredibly underrated. When we have bad experiences in life or in our careers, we often look back at the experience as a mistake or a waste of time. Yet, when I look back at my professional career, the experiences that I didn't like were just as important, if not more important, as tuning into what I did like at work. That experience served almost like a kind of tuition, as if I was going back to class, except the class was for me to learn about myself as much as possible. So to reference Hollow Knight once again, they're hitting us with the quotes, but we're always left with reminders of the errors we've made. Let your mistakes not burden you, but serve as guideposts on where not to travel. So if you're feeling anxious about choosing the wrong career, especially if you've just graduated, I encourage you to simply see this first role as part of a longer journey. Maybe this experience confirms for you that you want to keep working in the same type of work, same field, maybe even the same company. Or maybe this experience convinces you that what you thought was the dream goal maybe isn't so dreamy after all. Either way, you have an opportunity for growth. Think about using your current experiences to inform your future growth, even if they aren't the most positive. Maybe you find that you like 10% of your experience in your first role, and then when you move to the second role, you might find that you like 20 or 30%. Focus on trying to increase that percentage as you develop your career by identifying your likes, your dislikes, your strengths, your weaknesses. You can even do this within the same company or role as you refine your understanding of what drives you. Another common feeling I hear from students is this anxiety that if I leave a job, it feels like I'm starting over again or falling behind what's conventional success. I definitely felt this when approaching a lot of my own career decisions. However, career switching has its benefits too, providing a unique opportunity to build on and combine different talents to your advantage. But there's this quote that I saw the other day from Big Spark, not from Hollow Knight, that sums this up pretty well. Don't be afraid to start over. This time you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. For example, teaching high school students, no surprise, requires a lot of public speaking, like a lot of public speaking. You have to be on all the time. When I first started teaching, the idea of having to hold the attention of anywhere from 10 to 40 freshmen in high school at once, who are not much younger than me at the time, was intimidating. I definitely didn't knock it out of the park my first day, but over time, I got my reps in. Even as someone who generally considers themselves an introvert, by the time I had wrapped up my third year of teaching, I had felt a lot more comfortable speaking not only to large groups of students, but to people in general. I also had to learn how to quickly build strong relationships with different students very quickly, very early on in the year. Because as the late educator Rita Pearson stated, kids don't learn from people they don't like. So what's crazy is when I moved to my first real estate job, I was super worried that I would be starting over from scratch. But what I found was these developed skills that I developed in teaching, relationship building, public speaking, those skills gave me an edge, not only in that real estate position, but in every single job I've had since then. So I still consider myself more introverted, but in my current job as an admissions officer, sometimes I have to talk to or present to anywhere from one person to hundreds of people at once, which is something that would have terrified me during college. Oh, wow. But because I built in the public speaking reps, I feel both comfortable and confident when it comes to public speaking, most of the time at least. So again, you aren't starting from zero if you decide to make a career switch, or if you find that your first job just isn't the right fit for you and you need to move somewhere else. Remember that you're starting from experience. So if you are thinking about a move, think not only about the skills that you're going to learn in this next position or this next role, but also think about what unique talents you're bringing from the role you already had or experiences you've already had that can give you an advantage, even if the role that you're approaching is entirely different in terms of industry or function. Now, despite these benefits, I will say that being a career changer also has its share of anxiety and downsides. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that at all. I'd be lying if I said I had this unwavering optimism throughout all of these career decisions. I was terrified. I was terrified that I was gonna make the wrong choice, that I was gonna make a mistake. And one of the most damaging things that I've experienced as a career changer is this feeling of feeling behind or unfocused. On one hand, it can feel exciting and ambitious to do a drastic career shift, but seeing people who are more traditionally tracked move and progress in a single role or a single career, that can crush your self-confidence if you let it. It can keep you from being invested in your own growth because you're so invested into watching the growth of others. From my experience as someone who's made a lot of lateral moves, so moving from an entry-level position to another entry-level position to another entry-level position, That definitely had a negative effect on my self-esteem and self-worth, and also my sense of financial well-being in my case. Not advancing in a single company, but hopping from industry to industry, I found that I haven't been progressing both financially or even developmentally in my role as fast as some of my peers who have more of a fine-tuned focus. So especially if you're making a lot of those more lateral moves, it may be frustrating not moving up the ladder, if that's your goal. This obviously, of course, depends on what industry you choose to work in as well, but just speaking from my experience. I know the common advice people say is to not care what other people think, or don't compare yourself to others. We see this message time and time again. It's something that I say on this channel, something that I see other YouTubers and people on Instagram and social media say all the time. But newsflash, that is super difficult for a lot of us, myself included. So I want to qualify that piece of advice, because I think it's more like, don't let other people's opinions be the primary reason that you make decisions. Don't worry about comparing yourself to others, but realize that getting to the point where you feel more confident in your own path, that takes time, even if you believe in the advice not to compare yourself to others. Know that the uncertainty, the anxiety will come, but don't confuse that anxiety or the opinions of others as reasons not to jump into the next chapter of your journey. Every choice we make means we give something else up, but you get to choose what you give up, and you get to choose what you gain. So the last thing that you want is to not make a choice because you're afraid to be wrong, and then you end up not losing anything, but you don't gain anything either. This is something I definitely want to reiterate in terms of importance, because I feel like a lot of us do have this pressure in terms of comparison. Imposter syndrome has become more and more common and prevalent in today's society. And just, hearing that message over and over again, don't compare yourself to others, is one of those easier said than done things. And I think knowing, as someone who's still working through that myself, that you get more confident with time. And it's not necessarily just this on and off switch where you hear that message or you see that Instagram post and you're like, okay, I'm not going to compare myself to others. Sometimes that really just doesn't click right away, but you actually have to build and work on that. It's almost like a skill that you have to practice over time. So before I end this video, I want to leave you with one of my favorite comics by Zach Weinersmith, who makes the Saturday Morning Breakfast cereal comics. A friend actually tipped me off to this creator, and I'll leave a link to the description below for the specific comic I'm talking about. Definitely take a read. It only takes a minute, but the key takeaway for me is that it takes 7 years to master something. Let's say it takes 7 years to master something. So if you live to be 60, 70, or 80, you have so many opportunities to begin again, start from experience, and continue to find success. If you're feeling some anxiety over your first job or your next job, I hope that this video gives you a clearer picture of what that looks like from the other side of a career switch. I'm super excited for part 2, where I'll talk about some of the best advice I've been given as I've approached these career switches and career decisions, so I don't get stuck in career decision paralysis. But until then, thanks for watching. Stay intentional, enjoy the process as much as you can, and I'll see you in the next cut.